that little task, it ended up being quite a bit of work, but it was my pleasure to do, was when the principal had asked me, and I don't know if you listened to that one part of the podcast where my son-in-law had asked me about this big project I was working on. The principal had asked me while I was still teaching, Karen, can you help me develop strategies to help the teachers incorporate, access, whatever creativity in their classes? Because, you know, in education, they have these sort of universal standards of what should be happening at certain grade levels. And in the high school, it has a bunch of different names, but the most current one, when I was still teaching, they referred to it as the 4 C's. It was communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. That's what we needed to be sure our kids had when they graduated high school, because those were foundational to a successful, you know, time after you finish high school. And so usually districts would, or departments would tackle the first 3, because, you know, you can do communication in any class, you can do collaboration in any class, critical thinking should be in every class, but that creativity part was always the sticking point. It's like, they get that when they take their fine arts elective. But the idea was that, no, it's a different way of thinking. And that you should be able to apply to all of yours. And that's why it's one of those important components to what we want our kids to be able to do when they finish high school, is to be creative.
Right.
And so it was, you know, I did a ton of research, because that's what I do. Ton of research. You know, what is creativity? What is problem solving? How does technology fit in? What is innovation? You know, and it all kind of boiled down to to me, it manifests itself most clearly in the kind of questions that get asked. Mm-hmm. If you have straightforward questions like, well, I mean, the dumb one is, when was the War of 1812? You know, who was the first president of the United States? You know, those kind of questions, you're going to get pretty flat answers. But when you ask questions like, well, what does the number 0 actually represent? Or are we healthier now? Or is it just because we're more aware of what health is? You know, those are the open-ended kind of questions that then really you need to exercise to start looking at things all different kinds of ways, instead of the War of 1812 happened in 1812. Mm-hmm. And so that was the thing that I was trying to get, you know, that is what I was trying to help the principal, because he's the one that's going to have to eventually set up the stuff for the teachers, but wanted him to be aware of, you know, a lot of times it just boils down to the right kind of questions. And so like in a class, if you're going to do a research paper, instead of saying, you know, what were the, give us a development of the life of Michelangelo when he was living with the de Medici family. It's like, you just go in, you Google it, and you can follow it. Whereas instead you might say, would Michelangelo's work been different had he not ever come in contact with the de Medici family? Because then you need to really sort of research it and like come up with sort of ideas, and then go in and see if, you know, if their ideas are justified. You know, then you start looking at things creatively. And so in the podcast, the one that was the whoa moment was, you know, before school starts, we have professional development days where you bring in your staff and you do exercises so they can kind of see what the focus of the rest of the year is going to be school-wide. And so for that one year, it was creativity, or that time it was creativity. So I try to set it up with one of those of, you got to literally think outside of the box. What does that look like? How does that work? So I spent so much time just wording the instructions so that I didn't like sort of persuade your brain to move in a certain way, but it was simply, I'm giving you a sheet of paper, here are some drawing utensils, here's some templates of circle, square, and triangle. I just want you to create an image using the circle, square, triangle. You have 10 minutes, go. And so they did it. And then I said, okay, now we're going to do gallery walk, which simply means silently you're going to walk around. You can see what everybody else did, how everybody else attacked this question. So then they did. So then they sat down and go, here's another piece of paper. Okay, I want you to do the same thing again. And so some of them were, you know, they saw what other people had done. And it's really funny because the math people tended to want everything to be symmetrical. It was like, oh, outside the rectum, they're really pulling over here. So then afterwards, I asked if anybody wanted to share theirs with the rest of the group, and my department chair, the music teacher, says, "Oh, I'll help, and I'll bring up something." So he brings up something that's like this, with lines on it, like random lines, like, "Oh my God, Jim, did you like not get the memo what I wanted you to do?" So I said, "Well, Jim," because I didn't know how to say, "Jim, why don't you tell the group what your process was?" He goes, "I got the paper and I just sort of randomly folded it up, and then I drew the circle, the square, and the triangle on that, and then I unfolded it." And that's where we all went. I said, where did that even come from? Because that's the kind of out of the box thinking that then pushes people, because then I'm sure after he did that, the rest of the faculty that were in there, their minds probably went, "Well, then I could have done this, I could have done this, I could have done." And so, yeah, that was, I think. Oh, and then after that, I told him, "Okay, well, now we're going to do something else too. We're going to take you. I want you to pick one of your exercises, and I have these little frames that I bought, and we're going to put them up on the whiteboard. I want you to pick one, and we're going to put it up on the whiteboard, and you're going to notice that you're going to look at what you did differently now because it's got a frame around it. Just like if you hang a map in your room, it's a map, but if you have it behind frame, if it's framed, then you don't look at it as a map, you look at it as a work of art." And so, again, it's context. What is the context? What are the questions that you ask? How do you set all these things up? And so I think teaching helped me to figure out why I do what I do, and what it's done is it's giving me the confidence to be able to say, yeah, it's not working right now, I'm going to put it aside, I'm not going to labor it, and then I can come back to it. Or I'll just leave it up and I'll look at it and I'll go, "Oh, I have this, whatever, let me try how that works." And so that's why a lot of my works are multimedia collage, because I'm not just attacking it at one point. Even the drawings, I just keep adding on to them as I see I need to do them. But yeah, it's so I don't sell it, because to me, even if it's somebody would like to have it and they're going to give me money and for some reason it just tweaks my brain into thinking that it's no longer something that I'm just doing for myself, that there's this audience that I need to sort of be aware of, whereas I don't want that responsibility. And so that's why, like, I did a drawing not too long ago, and I had it posted up on my Instagram, and a woman who she's very left brain. I think she's in some kind of science field, and very sort of like she's very good if you want to keep track of things. And she has a memory for knowing where everything is, and so on and so forth. And she had commented on that drawing. She goes, "Karen, I've looked at artwork before, but I've never had the experience where if I looked at it long enough, I started to see something different." And she goes, "And that was really cool." So I gave her the drawing. To me, it was like, it makes sense for her to have the drawing. So it was interesting, because she didn't know what it was going to happen, but I saw her later, and I go, "I have something for you, Angela." And she saw it was in this manila full envelope, and she was like, "Yeah, it's yours. You deserve to have this." And so that's, why I don't sell it. And I think that's why my friend, the middle school teacher, doesn't sell hers either. It's just, that's not what it's for. It's because someone get some kind of joy out of it,
right?
That's or see something. It's I guess it's like the teacher in us still. Yeah, it's
right.
Like you've learned something, or you found something out about yourself that and that's
I see.
Yeah.
I did not know the specifics of that reasoning either. We had listed, we had put labels on all the works in the show, but then created a price list. And
I had people say, "What does NFS mean?"
Right.
I think
we need to change that, though, because there's even that term has a certain connotation that I think no longer is appropriate. It's not that it's not for sale. It's like it's like out of the equation. The sale part is not. It's just not part of the equation. And maybe we just put inquiries or
Yeah.
inquire.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so
Mhm.
yeah, that's really beautiful, and I think most artists would love to be able to operate that way,
Yeah.
And it's
I'm lucky that I can. I mean, I had put in 37 years.
yeah, I
Working
think
with
even
teenagers.
even with Griff, he doesn't want to sell his favorite works.
No,
they're his
yeah,
babies. He
they
doesn't
are.
want-
They
he
are.
doesn't want-
Yeah.
He doesn't want to part with them.
No.
Yeah,
He doesn't
yeah.
want to part with them.
No.
But it's
He
like
didn't
this,
want you to even mention it.
right.
He didn't even want
It's
to
like
brought
kind of
up.
a this necessary evil that you have, that most artists have to,
Mhm.
in order to be able to fund doing what they love,
Yeah.
they need to part with some of the
Something,
work
yeah.
and quote unquote sell it
Mhm.
so that they can, they can pay their bills
Yeah.
and buy their materials and things
Mhm.
like that. Yeah, but I mean that's really beautiful. Like, I don't know if we put this on the web, if you're gonna get flooded with like compliments.
Well, yeah.
You're like, people creatively trying to give you the biggest compliments. So that maybe they'll
And
get-
they have to understand that as a high school teacher, I've probably heard it all. It's like, nah, you gotta do better than that. No, it is something that you just sense when you see a reaction or you hear something. It's kind of like,
Right.
like
Right.
this woman